Hello, everyone. Welcome back to LFC Down Under, where you get all the latest Liverpool reaction from Sydney, Australia. I'm your host, Jeremy Walker, and today we'll be looking over Liverpool's 2-0 win at Stamford Bridge over Chelsea. And yeah, it was a great result for the Reds and a wonderful performance, despite Chelsea having a red card, which sort of let Liverpool ease into the game a bit more and really dominate in that second half. But we'll cover the whole match and discuss the main talking points from the game, including Thiago's debut, which was much anticipated. People were surprised he actually got on the pitch in the end, but nevertheless he did. We'll talk about the red card from Christensen for his rather rugby-like tackle on Sadio Mane as Henderson plays Mane through on goal. And yeah, we'll just talk about that, the way Liverpool played, where they set up, and how Frank Lampard's Chelsea tried to sort of combat us, especially in the second half when going down to 10 men. But yeah, overall, I thought Liverpool played well. We played like champions, and even though Chelsea went down to 10 men, I thought that we showed maturity in our performance. We went 2-0 up, and we didn't need to keep pressing on to try and score more goals. Although we sort of did that in a way before Thiago gives away the penalty, which Alisson saves. And I think after that, Klopp or even the players knew that we didn't need to risk anything else, and that's when we sort of started playing a bit more conservatively. That's when James Milner came on and really, put a foot down in midfield and said, right, lads, we're just going to keep the ball here, nothing stupid. So that's what Milner came on to do late in the second half. Liverpool actually making 3 substitutes for the first time. Well, we don't usually do that too often under Klopp. Klopp usually leaves his substitutes until late in the second half, at least the 70th minute roughly. So a bit surprising to see Thiago get on at half-time. Henderson obviously going off. I think it was a little thigh injury, which hopefully is nothing too major for him. But as Klopp said in his post-match press conference after the game, that it was a perfect time for Thiago to come on in the second half with the 10 men of Chelsea, just because we know exactly what Thiago brings. He has that passing range, that vision in passing, and his touch is immaculate in midfield. So to give him time on the ball, which he's going to inevitably have with only the 10 men of Chelsea, it was obvious to sort of bring him on, give him space on the ball to hurt Chelsea's backline through penetrating those forward passes, which he did to a certain extent. We saw a few glimpses of what he's all about. He definitely, when he picks up the ball, he looks forward to try and make those penetrating passes through Chelsea's defending midfielders, which we saw a few times. He also tried to play a few cutout balls into Salah over the top of Chelsea's defence, which didn't quite go to plan for him. But still, he made 75 passes within the space of 45 minutes, which is a Premier League record since the stats were available from 2003-04. So yeah, it was actually, he eclipsed Christensen, who I think made 66 passes within 45 minutes. So he breaks the record for that, making the most passes within 45 minutes or less, I'm pretty sure it was. So yeah, that was, a good stat. Most of his passes were, not all too sideways and backwards, like you'd expect for someone making that many passes. He actually came on to great effect and really got Liverpool ticking in midfield, which is sort of something that we didn't necessarily lack in the first half. Henderson was dictating play from that number 6 role, and he did quite well at doing that. But Chelsea were rather compact in the first half. They sat deep and didn't really allow us to play through the lines at all. So our main attacking threat came down the wings through Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold, as it usually does, to be fair. But bringing Thiago on in that second half really allowed us to sort of, get the fullbacks wide like we usually do, but then Thiago also adds that option of playing a pass through more of the middle spaces in midfield and giving us another dynamic that way. But yeah, we'll start, I guess, with, I was going to say, the moment of the match, which is a bit late because I've sort of explained part of the match already. The moment of the match, definitely, for me, it has to be the red card. That is the turning point in the game. Liverpool were dominant in the first half before the red card, and I did think, even if Chelsea didn't get Christensen sent off, I think we still go on to win the game, just the way that we were passing the ball around and really dominating and pegging Chelsea back in their half. as I said before, Chelsea did sit back and play quite defensively, which is odd, for a home game, despite there being no supporters at Stamford Bridge, which is maybe something, maybe the supporters would be on their back a bit more to press Liverpool a bit more heavily, but we never really saw that. Chelsea really sat back, stayed compact, almost Mourinho-like when he was there at Chelsea, which is a bit surprising for a Frank Lampard team with all the creativity they have in their squad as well. But they really tried to play on the counter-attack, play with the likes of Timo Werner, who never really, he was definitely their brightest spark on the day, but it never really got going completely. He got the ball a few times, but the midfielders of Chelsea, like sort of Kovacic playing and Kante playing the ball over the top for Werner, were just asking too much of him. Fabinho did exceptionally well to deal with Werner's threat. Fabinho, I didn't know he was that quick, to be honest. We never really see him, chasing after strikers. Well, he does do that because he's a defensive midfielder, but not like Joe Gomez and Virgil van Dijk do usually. So we got to see a bit more pace of Fabinho, which was nice to see. And he really stood up to the task very well. Didn't really make any rash challenges at centre back. He looked calm, composed, and just his positionally even he was fantastic. Next to Virgil van Dijk, which obviously gives you confidence playing next to the best defender in the world. But nevertheless, he did really well. He dropped off when he needed to drop off, given when he had to allow himself a few more yards to run onto some balls that were played through for Timo Werner, because we know just how quick Timo Werner is. And he also stepped up when Werner was picking the ball up when they were playing right to his feet, and he made some great challenges that way too. So he knew when to come up, when to stay in line with the defence, and when to drop off, which was great to see that. I'm sure Klopp would have worked during the week with Fabinho on that too, and that definitely showed. Joe Gomez and Matip not named in the squad at all today. There's obviously some injury issue with Joe Gomez and Joel Matip, so we're going to be yet to see next week against Arsenal what we'll do with the back line there. But Fabinho looks solid there, and to be honest, having him as our fourth choice centre half isn't all that bad going off what we saw today. Honestly, it's one game. We can't read all too much into it. What we've seen before, Fabinho at centre back last season against Wolves, or was it the season before? We saw him play there in the FA Cup alongside, I think it was Keanu Hoover, who has just moved to Wolves himself with the deal for Diogo Jota. But he looks solid. He is a defensive midfielder, so he has those defensive qualities about him. He has that knowledge. And as I mentioned before, playing with Virgil van Dijk, that's going to help him a long way too. So, Fabinho played an excellent game. There was a shout for him to have man of the match. Although Mane did score two good goals as well. So between them for man of the match for me, just going back to the moment of the match, the red card, which I sort of gone off on a bit of a tangent there, explaining just leading up to the red card, but comes right at the end of the second half. Christensen, really, he can't blame him too much for, I guess, taking Mane down. I mean, it's probably a smarter idea not to bring him down and maybe see if Mane takes the ball away from Kepa, which is what he would have done had he not taken Mane down like a rugby tackle. But if I think Mane he takes the ball around Kepa, if Christensen doesn't tackle him down to the floor. And then again, I think if he does get a touch, Mane, even Kepa could be bringing him down from outside the box, and that could be a red card for Kepa as well. Honestly, not too displeased that Christensen was shown the red card and not Kepa, because we all know the mistake that Kepa made in the second half, leading to Mane's second goal, putting Liverpool 2-0 up. So, definite red card. Lampard was sort of saying after the game it could have gone either way, and that if he would have been happy with any decision, red card or yellow card. But he said that something about the referee. He should have. Maybe if he showed the yellow card first of all, it should have stayed a yellow card. And if he showed a red card straight away, Frank Lampard wouldn't have been displeased with that either. Something along the lines of that. I've paraphrased that really poorly for you, but it was along the lines of that, and Lampard was sort of complaining a bit about the red card, which I thought, no, it's a definite red card. You need to just own up to the mistake, just say it was a red card and move on from there. And Lampard was going off on how, if Chelsea converted their penalty, if, Kepa doesn't necessarily make that mistake in goals, and it's a different game at 1-1, and that is true. But then again, I guess you could look at it that way, or you could take it on the chins and say, yes, it's a team effort. Kepa did make that mistake, and Christensen did that foul against Mane, which you know led Chelsea to go down to 10 men, and Jorginho didn't score the penalty, so it's all part of the game, and I think that Lampard, obviously emotions after the match and stuff, he'll analyze it in a bit more depth going into that. But I think he probably needed to take a bit more, I guess responsibility is the wrong word, but I guess own up to the mistakes that his team made and sort of individual errors, because that's all part of the team game as well. But yeah, enough said. I don't have really much against Lampard in saying that. Just a disclaimer there. But yeah, I guess we'll move on to some of the next topics I have down on my trusty notepad. Yeah, no Chelsea press. Their press was really non-existent at all. Again, surprising when you have such quick players at the top of the field, and with the likes of Mason Mount, Timo Werner, and who was on the right for Chelsea again? It was I can't remember exactly the formation they were playing, but you got the likes of Mount and Werner up top, who are great in pressing as well with their pace. So it was strange to see them sort of sit back a bit and allow Liverpool to dictate play from the back, which meant that Chelsea sat a bit deeper, and allowed Liverpool to dictate play and really peg them back in their own half, which was a bit strange. It never really allowed Chelsea to get going, and then obviously we know the Liverpool press once we lose the ball, and because Chelsea were stuck in their own half once they won the ball back. Liverpool immediately applied the press with the likes of Henderson, Keita, who was usually the furthest midfielder forward in the first half, and Wijnaldum. And we know our front three were set up to press as well. So really that pressing group did magnificently to peg Chelsea back into their own half, and we didn't allow them out. We were relentless in our press, especially Jordan Henderson, who really was all over the pitch in the first half, just pressing all over from that central lying deep position. And he did a wonderful job in winning the ball back and reading the play. Almost exactly what we expected from Fabinho when he plays in that defensive midfielder role. So again, testament to Liverpool's midfield and the flexibility we have there. Even in our likes of our defensive shape, I thought we were perfectly set up, and exactly what I mentioned. We didn't allow Chelsea to get out of their half really. A few times where over the top balls were played for Timo Werner, and he sort of picked up the ball and drove at our defence a bit. But again, he didn't really have any, real. He had support, but not really, the numbers that you'd expect Chelsea to commit forward and really be clinical with the counter attack. I guess one of the counter attacks I can remember was Havertz. Werner played the ball down for him on the left in the first half, and they sort of were breaking down the left, and Havertz, cuts the ball back for Mason Mount, who's on the edge of the box, and usually in that circumstance, Mount sets himself up for a shot, much like Lampard would do outside the box in his prime. But instead, Mount passes the ball out wide to N'Golo Kante, who never really sets himself right for the shot, and he ends up getting dispossessed. So, the counter-attack wasn't exactly fluid from Chelsea, and, they're going to need time to gel with the likes of Havertz and Werner when Ziyech comes back as well, with that front line and that counter-attack too. So, yeah, many people saying it was a good time for Liverpool to play Chelsea because, the squad's still gelling in this early part of the season. Kepa is still in goal, and there's so many question marks over him at the moment. And we'll come to Kepa a bit later on when we discuss the second half and Mane's second goal, where he makes that big mistake. But, Chelsea are going to need a bit more time to gel. They had Chilwell on the bench, Thiago Silva on the bench, not on the bench, sorry, sitting in the stands, along with Hakim Ziyech. So they're going to have quality to come into the squad, and that's going to take time to integrate all those players and have them gelling. But once that happens, I'm sure with all the quality those players have, they'll be more than fine finishing in the top four. But again, it showed sort of the lack of chemistry today with Chelsea, and I guess the likes of Havertz and Werner really linking up with the midfield as well. There was just that lack of that 1 second, that sharp second that you need in the final third to really connect and set up a goal scoring opportunity. So I thought Chelsea lacked that a bit today, although Werner did show some bright sparks with his pace, and not necessarily caused us problems per se, but gave us something to think about. But our defenders stepped up to the challenge really well. As I mentioned, Fabinho, Werner, it seemed, tried to play off of him the most, and make his runs off of Fabinho rather than Virgil van Dijk, which obviously would be the logical thing to do, Van Dijk being the best defender in the world. So, But Fabinho stood up to the challenge and really, put a strong foot in throughout the game. So well done to Fabinho again. Could have been man of the match. Mane could be man of the match as well. We'll get onto that a bit later too. But I thought that Virgil van Dijk, although he had, not really a quiet game, he was very solid, great performance. Especially, it's one that he needed to have that after that Leeds game where, he was a bit sloppy, it must be said. And he bounced back perfectly, and that's what the mark of one of the best defenders in the world is. You have to bounce back in the next game. He did that perfectly. And one thing I wanted to note was I watched the game back a second time after watching it at 1:30 in the morning, Sydney time live. But once I got up throughout the day, or during the middle of the day, I rewatched the game and I noticed Virgil van Dijk, he sort of had a clearance in the first half where Timo Werner is bearing down on him and pressing him. One of the few times we saw Chelsea actually try to press Liverpool. But the ball was bouncing, or the ball was in the air, I can't quite remember, but it was there for Virgil van Dijk to clear on the volley. And we saw against Leeds when Patrick Bamford was bearing down on him, running towards the cop end. Van Dijk tries that outside the foot clearance pass to Robertson at left back. And you could sort of tell that, he wasn't making that same mistake again, definitely not twice in a row. And he just boots it, not necessarily boots it, but he finds a clearance towards Trent Alexander-Arnold on the right, and it was a much more controlled clearance, much more, I know I've been in the situation last game, I know exactly what happened, and he put a bit of more of a foot through the ball and really, changed his sort of clearance, I guess, in a way, and he learnt from his mistake last game against Leeds. So I thought that was just, a little mark, a thing I saw during the game that mark of a champion, really, who, even those little things, Virgil van Dijk is still improving on it. It's good to see that in his game too. So, I just we'll move on to a few more points within the first half. Did a first half analysis for you guys here on the channel. I had to sort of rewatch the match just because I watched it live at 1:30 in the morning. When you watch it as a supporter live, you're more emotionally invested in the game rather than thinking about it from a tactical point of view. So that's one of the reasons why I like to, sort of rewatch the matches to get more of a tactical standpoint, tactical view, and really, analyze the match more. So doing that for you guys. So hopefully you appreciate this analysis so far. But even we'll talk a bit about Kepa then and his mistakes. Obviously, Mane's second goal. Kepa picks the ball up, and first of all, Mane loses possession of the ball. He tries to find a pass to Robertson down the left wing. He loses the ball. He's quite angry about it, and in reaction to that, he goes and presses. He sprints towards Kepa. Just out of sort of out of spite. He's angry at himself for losing the ball, so he absolutely all guns blazing sprints at Kepa, and Kepa sort of he panics on the ball. He should be clearing the ball straight away. He sees Sadio Mane on his right coming red hot towards him, yet he tries to find a 6-yard pass to Jorginho, who's directly in the line of Mane pressing him. So Mane picks the ball up and finishes once Kepa passes it right into him. So if you look at it from a Sadio Mane point of view, it's a fantastic piece of work, fantastic piece of pressing by him, not giving up on the play and trying to win the ball back straight away after he loses the ball. Tries to win the ball back for his team, and it results in a goal. So Mane was rewarded for his great press and his relentless, trying to win the ball back sort of style and not giving up. So, props to Mane for that. But then again, Kepa, that's the mistake that a goalkeeper in the Premier League level just cannot be making against the champions or against any team for that matter in the division. So, Kepa, he's probably going to be out the side now. Chelsea are going to sign, what's his name from, was it France or he's a Senegalese keeper. His name's escaped me. It was around a fee of £20 million. So they'll get him in, and who knows where Kepa's future will lie now. But definitely that game will not do his price tag any good in terms of Chelsea trying to find the return for what they paid for him. What was it, £70 million? Just earlier, a couple seasons ago, paying for Kepa. So it's going to be hard to get all that money back for Kepa. I don't know if they want him to stick around or they just want to offload him completely. But yeah, it's definitely, I don't think it's sort of, even comparisons were being drawn to Karius and the way he's playing at the moment. Um, yeah, Kepa. So it's just unfortunate for him. You do feel a bit sorry for him and the pressure that he's come under Chelsea. But football is a relentless business, and that's what he has to come up against, face all the critics, and yeah. To be honest, Lampard, he was asked about it after the game as well, and he said no, he didn't want to answer any questions on the Kepa situation. So in a way, he's sort of protecting his keeper and not really calling him out, but again, not offering too much support there because he knows that he doesn't want him in the squad, and Kepa, his time is coming up at Chelsea. So yeah, but even in the first half, Kepa looked a bit dodgy on the ball, a bit nervous and a bit scared. Really, obviously he's shot of confidence. Even in the Brighton game, Brighton's goal to equalise to bring it to 1-1 against Chelsea. Kepa, he should be saving that goal from outside the box from Trossard. It's a save that you expect a Premier League keeper to make. I think he's only 6 foot tall, Kepa, as well, so he's not necessarily tall for a goalkeeper either. So maybe that's part of the reason behind why he's prone to conceding from goals from outside the box. But yeah, back to in the first half when Salah, I think it was either a deflected pass or a pass from Robertson maybe. But Salah is sprinting for the ball towards the right side of the edge of the box, and Kepa comes out to try and meet Salah there, or beat Salah there, I should say, and win the ball. But Salah, we know how quick he is, lightning fast, gets there before Kepa, dribbles around him, and crosses it for Firmino, who, if it wasn't for Christensen, would have had an open net to put Liverpool 1-0 up. So even in the first half, Kepa was, not showing the greatest signs of confidence either. So we just know how shot his confidence is, and that Chelsea, if they're going to push for the title, which is what people are wanting and what people are going to be expecting of them in the next few years, with all the money they've spent, upwards of £200 million, they're going to need a new goalkeeper, like Liverpool and Man City did. They went out and got your Edisons and your Allisons to really make that difference. Which will tell over the course of a 38 game season. So Chelsea, they are addressing that. So they're bringing in, is it Edouard, the keeper? It might be Edouard. The name escapes me, but yeah, the Senegalese keeper, he'll come in for roughly £20 million, and maybe that's their long term. That will be their long term replacement for Kepa, and we'll be yet to see if he pushes on. And takes Chelsea to the next level. But enough keeper talk about Chelsea. Let's move on to the next talking point I have down here. We were talking about Timo Werner in the first half. He was a bit isolated today, and never really, as I mentioned, got going. Never really got going. The counter-attack was there for Chelsea, but Liverpool, even their midfielders, despite pressing high up the pitch, our defenders were able to drop off, and likes of Jordan Henderson and Gini Wijnaldum and Naby Keita dropped off as well, and were able to cover for our fullbacks if the ball was played in behind Alexander-Arnold and Robertson as well, which teams look to do against us. We know that Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold like to push up high. They press up the field high, so naturally teams are going to look and say there's going to be space behind the fullbacks. It's something that Timo Werner tried to do. He tried to peel off on the left side, peel off of Fabinho and go onto Trent's wing. But Trent was up to the task today defensively as well, and I'm sure that's something that the Liverpool coaching staff would have looked at and known that Timo Werner was sort of going to be running into those channels, and Trent and Robertson had great games defensively today, and they really were aware of the Chelsea counter-attack and those balls over the top, and we were perfectly set up to deal with those today. And even when the balls did beat Alexander-Arnold and Trent, as I mentioned before, Fabinho was able to read the game from centre-back and cover that way too, and he had a wonderful game in the back there. So, defensively, we answered the questions from Leeds last week when we conceded 3 goals. Then again, in the first half, we did perform defensively decently too. Second half, Chelsea go down to 10 men, so it's a bit, it's going to be easier to defend them, and they really struggled to get out once we were boxing them in the first half, 11v11, and even 11v10 in the second half. It was even more relentless, and we had more possession of the ball. I think it was roughly maybe I know in the second half it was probably 70% possession to Liverpool, and overall it was 61% to us over the whole game. So yeah, it's just a dominant performance by us, professional performance by us. And next talking point, yeah, Chelsea not clinical on the counter. Um, yeah, as we mentioned before, Havertz never really got going either. Mount had a few bright sparks. He has a shot in the second half, which hits the roof of the net as well. But Alisson, I think, has it covered too. So, and N'Golo Kante, always lively and always looking to make things happen. Always really sharp on the ball, but again, not necessarily the greatest attacking option for Chelsea. And maybe it's something we'll see later on when Ziyech is put into the mould as well. Maybe Kante drops back a bit deeper into that more familiar number 6 position, which we saw him win the title in for Leicester. So there's going to be so many options for Lampard, and I'm sure they'll come good eventually. But yeah, we'll just move on to the next talking point. Henderson injury. Hopefully he's not out for too long. I think people were saying it was his thigh muscle, and that's not a great injury to have, but hopefully it's just a tweak and nothing too serious. Because I thought Henderson played well, he led us very well on the pitch, and yeah, talking about leading on the pitch, even Thiago when he came on was very vocal, and even after 1 or 1.5 training sessions with the squad, he was barking orders at Trent Alexander-Arnold and sort of telling him he wanted the ball back, and yeah, it was just wonderful to see. Despite being at 10 men and sort of the perfect opportunity for Thiago to make his debut with all the space he had in midfield because Chelsea were short a player, he did amazingly to dictate the play, and you just see how world class he is on the ball with his touches, and he always he thinks 2 or 3 moves ahead. He knows exactly where the ball's going to go when he receives it, and yeah, just seeing some of his plays out to Trent Alexander-Arnold and out to Robertson when he plays those diagonals over to them. He knows he's going there straight away. And there was an instance in the second half where he picks up the ball, I think he touches it with his left foot, and he doesn't even look up at Robertson, he just knows where he was, and he plays it right to his feet on a dime. So watching him was enjoyable in the second half as well, and it was great to see that we're going to have that type of player in our midfield. Yeah, he, as I mentioned, he got on the ball so much, dictated play, what you'd expect from Thiago, and yeah, really set the tempo for us. We saw that, it was quite a quick tempo that he set the midfield pace at, and then when Milner comes on, that sort of slows down a bit because, we wanted to slow the game down a bit, not give Chelsea any sort of opportunity on the counter-attack, as I mentioned before, but he came on and made the game his, and from that midfield position, which is, I guess, what we're going to see some more of down Thiago's future at Anfield. But Mane, we'll talk a bit about Sadio Mane. We'll go through a few of the players here. Just see how long we are. Half an hour roughly through the video so far. Thanks for staying with us if you've made it this far, by the way. But yes, Sadio Mane was very lively on the ball. He gave Reece James numerous problems down the wing. Defending Sadio Mane must be an absolute nightmare. He's just so fast, so quick on the ball, and so quick turning on the ball too. You just have no idea which way he's going to go with his little shimmies and turns and getting out of tight spaces. He was just absolutely impeccable. And yeah, scoring 2 goals, his first goal, wonderful header. He's so good with his head, and peels off of the right back Reece James, I think it was. And yeah, we'll talk a bit about the goal actually. That first Liverpool goal was absolutely wonderful, world-class goal. The front 3 linking up once again, and Salah and Firmino played that 1-2. Firmino into Salah on the edge of the box. Salah first time pass for Firmino on the right wing, who gets past Marcus Alonso, who isn't really known for his defending that well, more for his attacking prowess. But I think that's something Ben Chilwell will address for Chelsea, when he comes on. But yeah, nonetheless, Firmino picks it up on the right side of the box, takes a look up, sees Sadio Mane peeling off his defender, plays the ball on a dime to Sadio Mane's head, who just plants it into the left corner of the goal, and it was just a perfect goal. It's what you'd see Liverpool working on in the training ground all the time. Those crosses cutting back to the edge of the box, and the finish from the mid-range penalty spot area, which is exactly where you want to be pulling the ball back to in those instances. And I think that Liverpool. We saw in the first half that we had more possession of the ball. We were probing in and around the area. Obviously, Chelsea going down to 10 men helps a bit, but we were more lively in the second half. Thiago playing those balls into the likes of the front three and the midfielders beyond him, with Naby Keita as well picking up the ball in those sort of half space areas just before the edge of the box. And we were linking up much better when Thiago came on. He was fizzing those balls in, and same with Trent too. Trent Alexander-Arnold was fizzing those balls into the front three, and we're really dragging Chelsea from side to side on their box, and inevitably we scored that wonderful first goal, and I think that buried Chelsea right there. The second goal puts Chelsea to bed. We mentioned that the Kepa mistake, a great piece of pressing by Sadio Mane. If you look at it from his perspective, and Mane grabs 2 goals. I think it was the 13th time Mane has scored 2 goals in the Premier League in one match. Could have got his hat-trick. He tries, a speculative effort late in the second half with his left foot from outside the box to try and get that hat-trick. But we could have scored some more goals. We didn't. We pressed Chelsea a bit more after that, and kept the ball a bit more. Didn't want to give anything away. Nothing too silly. Obviously, Thiago gives away the penalty against Timo Werner. It was touch and go. I wasn't too disappointed. Hey everyone, back again. Sorry, the recording just cut out for some odd reason, but we'll continue. With Thiago giving away the penalty, was a bit disappointing. He barely makes contact with Werner, but I guess when you're travelling at that pace, Timo Werner, you're going to fall down, and he sort of tries to stay on his feet and get the shot away, but he does go down a bit easily as well. But penalty or not, it didn't really bother me too much. I guess it didn't bother me as much because Alisson does save the penalty in the end. Wonderful save. We see Jorginho's style of penalties. He sort of likes to, wait till the last second for the keeper to make a move. We see with his little hop, he delays his run up and waits for the keeper to make a move, and then he'll go in the opposite direction. Alisson stood his ground firm, and saved his first penalty for Liverpool at the third attempt. So, wonderful to see that. Obviously, I think eventually someone was going to save that type of penalty against Jorginho, because we know exactly what he does. He waits for the keeper to make a move in the last second, and Liverpool have obviously done their homework with that. Alisson's done his homework. He stood his ground and made a great stop to not give Chelsea a sniff in the game. So the score remains 2-0. A wonderful save by Alisson. Alisson will now be Thiago's best friend after saving that. But and more on Thiago's performance. So he does give away the penalty, a bit disappointing. It wasn't much in it, so you can't be too disappointed with that. Thiago's display on the day was a wonderful performance with all his passing and vision that he showcased for us Liverpool supporters. So even defensively, Thiago, he's not necessarily strongest. That's not his proper game. He's good defensively, don't get me wrong, but we know that his passing and his dribbling are really his prime assets as a player. But defensively, I thought he was actually pretty good. He won a lot of headers, to be fair to him as well. Not necessarily the tallest guy, but he was hungry. He was hungry to press. He was hungry to win the ball back, and he has a lot of bite to him in midfield. And we saw him. He did lose the ball a couple of times on a couple of occasions, but right after that, he's onto it. He's pressing. He's trying to win the ball back. He gave away, I think, a couple of fouls trying to do that in the process, but that's all right. We want to see that sort of hunger and desire from our midfield players, which is what we've come to see from Klopp's midfield and their workman-like attitude with your Hendersons, Wijnaldums, and Keitas, where they relentlessly press the ball and win the ball back for us. So I think Thiago still brings that to our squad, even though he may not be as effective in winning the ball back, but still nonetheless he has that attitude, and I'm sure that's something he can still improve on, even though he's 29 years old. We know that Klopp still is fantastic at improving players. Even at all ages, we've seen James Milner still keep those high levels of consistency, even though he's coming to the latter years in his career. So I'm more than confident with Thiago being in our midfield and us not suffering, defensively from that, if that makes sense. Although even if you're playing Thiago and he's sort of not going to offer that sort of defensive stability like your Hendersons would, like your Wijnaldums would, you can still play him alongside Henderson, Fabinho, and you're going to get that defensive bite from the midfield regardless, and find that balance between attacking vision and passing, and your defensive capabilities, and I guess positioning of Henderson and Fabinho. So yeah, Thiago had a good game when he came on. Obviously, we mentioned before, lots of space in the midfield for him, which allowed him to pick up the ball and dictate play very easily. So, sort of a good practice match in a way for Liverpool in the second half. Obviously, we had a game to play, and we didn't take it for a practice match, but it was sort of like a practice match, training ground sort of style, keeping the ball, especially after we concede the penalty. I think Klopp would have said, or the players would have said amongst themselves, okay, nothing stupid now, lads, we've saved the penalty, we're a bit lucky to be 2-0 up now at this stage, so let's do nothing silly. Milner comes on at that sort of stage and really slows the game down a bit. Thiago, Milner, and who else was it in midfield? Was Keita at that time? No, Keita got brought off for Milner. It was not Henderson, it was Thiago. Thiago, Milner, and who was our last midfielder? I'm forgetting it for some reason. I'm going blank, having a blonde moment. Sorry, guys. But yeah, no, it was Wijnaldum. Oh my goodness, I'm an idiot. But yeah, we kept the ball a bit slowly in midfield. Just stretched Chelsea out, made the pitch wide with our fullbacks, with Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson and Salah and Mane, who rotate a bit and make those overlapping runs between each other. So yeah, we slowed the game down a bit, did what we had to do to manage the game. It is an away game. Obviously, there's no supporters, but still an away game at the Bridge nonetheless. So we did nothing silly after the penalty was given away, and managed the game. Managed the game very well from there on out. And professional performance. When you see City play teams and the other team goes down to 10 men, they really put the team to the sword, and especially at the Etihad. When teams go down to 10 men, it's really a death sentence, and they really go after teams and put 5, 6, 7, 8 past them. And Liverpool didn't necessarily, go for the throat, go for the jugular, but it's not something that we needed to do. We needed to put in that professional performance, control the game, and that's exactly what we did do. Whilst pushing for a goal at the same time, we conservatively pushed and didn't commit crazy numbers forward, and because we didn't need to. And being away at Chelsea, we didn't necessarily need to put 4 or 5 past them, or go for that sort of goal tally, especially at this early part of the season, when the 3 points is what really matters and what counts, and that's exactly what Liverpool did. Very professional, as I mentioned, and yeah, that was great to see. That sort of performance, I guess, controlling the game and really putting Chelsea to the sword in terms of just, toying with them really in the second half, just passing the ball around and not allowing them to have a sniff whatsoever. We did see a couple of counter-attacks where obviously Werner wins the penalty through a counter-attack, and, it was a very, on-the-edge penalty decision to make. So, it wasn't necessarily anything too worrying in terms of our defence. We had a good performance. We did play a bit of a high line, but that's going to happen when you're pegging Chelsea back into your own half, and we dealt with their counter-attacks much better than we did against Leeds when we did play the high line. Although Leeds did have a few more players pressing our back four, and I thought Chelsea could have learned something for that, because when Leeds played us last week, they sort of had 5 players pressing up against our back four, against when the keeper had the ball and when Phillips was picking up the ball from deep positions, and they really pressed our back four and gave us trouble, and really questioned Henderson and Fabinho when he came on as to whether they should press or drop back to help our defence, because Leeds had 5 players against our back four, and I thought Chelsea would have done something similar, but they sat back and they tried to play on the counter attack, and they didn't really press us, which was surprising. They didn't take anything from that Leeds game, but nonetheless, our defence still stood up to the task and did well in terms of communication as well, picking up the likes of Werner and Havertz, who were also rotating, and Kante, rotating with Kovacic in the midfield. So we did well organisationally as well to pick up those players and really put a foothold in that match and show that we were the dominant team and that we were, the better organised team. and that we weren't going to let Chelsea play. And especially that was a great thing to see at Stamford Bridge being an away game too. So we'll go on to a few more topics. As I mentioned before, yeah, it was a good time to play Chelsea. You could say with most of their new signings not making the field, and with Kepa still playing in goal. A bit strange that Chelsea haven't got that signing before the start of the season, but nonetheless, we'll accept it. We got a nice goal from Kepa, so I'm not complaining about that. A bit of Roberto Firmino talk. Bobby didn't really, have the greatest of games. I thought he was a bit better in the second half. When obviously Chelsea go down to 10 men, and he has a bit more, I guess, tiny bit more space on the ball, and his touch was a bit better, a bit more lively. But in the first half, maybe he just needed that 45 minutes to get used to the game and get a feel for it and what was around him. But yeah, in the first half, his touch was a bit off, as was Gini Wijnaldum's too. So Firmino and Wijnaldum had a bit of a sloppy first half, it must be said. Was a bit disappointed with Gini's first half because you have Thiago on the bench, and he's going to be the guy who's probably going to take his spot. So I thought we would have seen something a bit more, a bit better of a performance in the first half from Wijnaldum. He does better in the second half, and that's when Thiago actually comes on. But I thought Gini would have stepped up to the plate a bit more. But then again, 45 minutes to gel. You're playing a good Chelsea side, so not too much to complain about in that department. But they did have a bit of a sloppy first half, it must be said, and I guess it wasn't a great effect to the game, to our game in the end. But maybe just something little bit. I'm trying to pick on little bits now. The Liverpool squad, but we're playing that well at the moment, and Liverpool are that good that we can try and sort of pick on the little nitty gritty things, which it's unfair in some regards, but it's sort of what we have to do now because Liverpool are at just such a high level. Maybe leave down in the comments below who you thought had a good game, who didn't have a good game, what the players could improve upon going into the next game against Arsenal. Yeah, just leave your thoughts down below. I guess we can move on to man of the match now as well. Leave your man of the match down below. Comment on that too. I have to go with Sadio Mane. He scores the 2 goals, so I'm going to give him the man of the match in my opinion. But Fabinho was a close second. His defensive game was magnificent, slotting into centre back, which is not his first position. So he did so well to read the game, and I thought he had an immaculate game at centre back, even on the ball. He was spraying passes as well, which we know he can do, and dictating play from the back there. Communicated well with Virgil van Dijk and the midfielders in front of him. So, it's not too bad having him as the fourth choice centre back. After all, from what we saw, as I mentioned before, only 1 game this season so far there. So he'll have to have a few more games there for us to know that he can exactly properly fill that spot if we don't sign a 4th choice centre half. But yeah, I was happy with the way he played. As I mentioned, positionally, he was sound in the air, winning headers as well. He was sound as well. So, fantastic performance by him there. And, I think he had almost probably a 10 out of 10 performance like Sadio Mane. So, Sadio Mane is so lively, just, gives us so many options down the left wing. He, drifts inside, he stays out wide, makes those diagonal runs out from the left wing to more central positions where Firmino sort of drops into midfield a bit and allows Mane to drive into that space. He's just always an outlet for us. We saw it in the first half when Henderson plays that over the top through ball, which mind you was a fantastic over the top through ball, by the way. It's one of those weird ones. It wasn't quite a diagonal through ball. It was just a dead straight ball that Henderson plays perfectly over the top, and it barely moves. It barely, swerves. It was just perfect straight chip ball over the top from Henderson. Perfect amount of backspin on the ball as well. And Mane, he's always that outlet for us up the top of the pitch with his pace as well. So just so incredibly, he's just amazing. He's world class. He's on top of his game at the moment, and one of the best players in the world, it has to be said. So Sadio Mane, fantastic game. Just looking down on my match notes when I rewatched the game. We had the red card. The front three I thought played a fantastic game, especially in the second half. They were just so versatile, gave Chelsea all sorts of problems in their defence, just with their movement and their, the way that they play 1-2s. There was another instance down the right wing where Salah plays a 1-2, I think with Trent Alexander-Arnold or Roberto Firmino. I think it was Trent. But yeah, just their touches. Although Firmino, I guess we said, didn't have the greatest of touches in the first half. Second half, he came good. And yeah, just their touches on the ball and their ability to link up with one another was fantastic. And just the fluidity of the attack today, or last night, I should say, was just fantastic and great to see them on the top of their game. And despite against 10 men, they still had a job to do, and they were very lively and gave Reece James and Marcus Alonso a lot to think about. Mane and Salah, obviously, Reece James still a youngster and had a tough job to do against Mane, but Mane gave him all sorts of issues, and Reece James stood up to the challenge a few times, but wasn't exactly comfortable with dealing with Mane. But who would be? Any right back in the world is going to have a tough day against Sadio Mane. Left back, we mentioned it before, Marcus Alonso, not necessarily the greatest defensively, and I think that showed. And Salah exploited that well. I was going to move on to Salah actually a bit. He had a wonderful game like most of the Liverpool players did, but as opposed to last season when we sort of saw Salah drop off, not necessarily drop off in terms of his goal tallies and contribution to the Liverpool team, but in terms of picking up the ball and his first touch and his link-up play last season wasn't necessarily up to scratch. And there's a few pundits and people in the media complaining about him not necessarily playing as a team player. I guess, which is not really the right thing to say. I'm sort of explaining that a bit incorrectly, but his link up play wasn't like Mane's was or like Firmino's was. But this season we're seeing Salah picking up the ball on the edge of the box and in those final third positions, and he's linking up perfectly with Firmino, with Mane, and he's a lot sharper on the ball this season. It looks like, which is fantastic to see. He's sort of address that part of his game from last season, and not only is he scored a hat-trick on opening day, he's still got the goals in his game. He's sort of adding that dimension to his game where he can feed off of the others around the Liverpool squad, which again gives Liverpool more attacking options going forward. And you know that from Salah you're also going to get opportunities to create from him too. So yeah, it was good to see him linking up a bit more with the players around him, and I guess not being as selfish as he was last season as well, which one could say. We saw him play a wonderful outside the foot cross to Virgil van Dijk in the second half, late in the second half, which Virgil van Dijk, it's sort of sat up in his mid-drift area, sort of that awkward position where you don't know whether to head it or to use your foot. So he sort of got caught in two minds, Virgil van Dijk, there, and probably should have scored, to be honest, but nonetheless it was a great ball in from Mohamed Salah, and he did a wonderful job passing the ball around that game, and dictating play in that final third where Liverpool were very sharp, and their movement was spectacular. We saw it in Liverpool's first goal where Salah is on the edge of the box and plays that 1-2 with Alright, we're back again, and I guess you could probably call it the third part of this video. Just got disrupted by one of my family members quickly, but I think we were talking about Salah and his intricate play on the edge of the box, and as we mentioned before with the first Liverpool goal, he plays that 1-2 with Firmino and plays a perfect pass right into the path of Bobby, who cuts it back perfectly for the head of Sadio Mane, which resulted in our first goal. Wonderful team goal, and what you've come to expect of Liverpool in that final third. But we'll move on to the next topic. We were talking a bit about Kepa before. I just wonder, the Liverpool coaching staff probably would have said to the Liverpool players, you need to press Kepa. He's obviously shot of confidence at the moment, so that's one thing I think Liverpool were aware of, pressing the goalkeeper. We know that he's not necessarily in the most comfortable position right now, and I think that the Chelsea defence, didn't necessarily fill me with confidence going into the game when they named their back four of Zuma, Christensen, Reece James, and Alonso. It's not, the greatest defensive sort of setup when you're playing against Liverpool, one of the best attacking teams in Europe. So I guess that they have injuries and stuff as well. Thiago Silva is yet to come into that squad. But then again, I thought that back four didn't fill me with confidence. And to a certain extent, Liverpool had, I guess, they could go into the game with a bit of arrogance about them, knowing that they could get at that back four. And I think that's what they did as well, knowing that they could get the better of this Chelsea defence and that they were, had the quality to get past them. So I think that, going into the game, Liverpool would have been confident seeing that Chelsea defensive line. And I think Chelsea will get better, and that defensive line when Chilwell comes into it and Thiago Silva will be much improved. But nonetheless, we'll move on to the next topic on my trusty notepad here. What do we have? We've got as I mentioned before, the training ground it was almost like a practice game. Keeping the ball in that second half when Milner came on. He does what Milner does when he comes on. Really, put a foothold on the game, controlled the game in midfield with Thiago and Wijnaldum. Really, settled the game down a bit. And that was that in the midfield. A bit about bit more about Thiago. People were raving about his game after the match, post-match. I like the little shimmy he does. He sort of fakes to go left with a body feint and then quickly moves the ball with the outside of his right foot towards the right side of him. And it really sold the Chelsea players a couple times. And he's just so sharp on the ball, and you won't be able to touch him. He's just showed all the class on the ball. And he's just so quick on the ball as well. There's just no touching him when he does have the ball. But we really did put Chelsea to the sword. Talk a bit about Alisson. Obviously makes the penalty save, which is massive to keep it at 2-0. He also makes a save, I believe it's after the penalty, where Tammy Abraham sort of threw, and he makes a great save down to his left side, which keeps it at 2-0 again. So Alisson, despite not having much to do during the game, was really stayed focused and made those two crucial saves, it must be said, towards the end of the game. And it was actually when Alisson saved the penalty, it was his first save of the season, and then it would have been the second save came after when he saves Abraham's shot down low at the bottom right corner of the goal. So I thought Frank Lampard's approach to the game was odd, sitting back so much against Liverpool. I thought we would have seen a bit more of a press, as I mentioned earlier on. But even when they went down to 10 men, it was a bit odd seeing who came on. It was Tomori. Tomori came on. I thought Rudiger maybe would have been a better option, a bit more experienced in that situation. But they stick with the back four. Even starting the game, Frank Lampard usually goes with the back three in the big games, especially against the top six, giving that Chelsea those more midfielders to deal with the top quality that the top six have in terms of pressing in the midfield and keeping a foothold in the game and trying to keep the ball in those big games. So I thought Lampard would have started with the back three just to try and combat Liverpool's ability to keep the ball. But it was a bit odd. I don't know exactly what the game plan was. Obviously to sit back deeper and play on the counter attack with the likes of Timo Werner and Havertz trying to hurt us up there. But we really, I guess we were aware and smart to that, and we knew exactly how to deal with them, and we really nullified Chelsea's counter attack very well, as I mentioned before. So a bit tactically strange from Frank Lampard. Even going down to 10 men, I thought they might have switched to 3 at the back after that, just to sort of get more defensive players across the park to deal with the likes of Mane and Salah driving at Reece James and Marcus Alonso. I thought that they were a bit isolated at times and needed help, and they didn't really get that, obviously being a man down too, so that made it more difficult for them. I thought the left side, or Chelsea's right side, was targeted a bit more in the second half. We saw Mane get at Reece James and Robertson make those overlapping runs very often in the second half, and Reece James really had a handful, and it was very hard for him. He had Jorginho sort of coming across to help him a bit, but then again, Jorginho doesn't really have the legs to help him out in every single play. So it was a tough day for him at the office. He did all right, but again, you're gonna struggle playing against Mane and Robertson with 11 men, let alone 10. So yeah, exactly. Chelsea's backline not the greatest today. Minamino was quite lively when he came on. He was roughly around the 85th minute mark. Had some good touches on the ball. Linked up with Salah quite well too. And it was good seeing positive signs from him again. Obviously, seeing the videos of pre-season training and pre-season matches, Minamino has been quite lively and he's been in good form. So it's another aspect, another player to come off the bench for us and make a difference in games as well. So that was good to see from him. And I think that we're sort of coming towards the end of the show, the post-match show. But Liverpool tried a few set-piece routines as well. I don't know whether it was because Chelsea were down to 10 men and we sort of had the luxury to do it or not, but we saw... Sorry, the video just cut out a bit there. We sort of saw, Trent and Salah try that free kick where Salah lays it off for Trent a bit, and we sort of were wondering. Salah was wondering if he could take the free kick over Trent, and Trent was sort of saying to him, "No, mate, this is mine, and this is prime Trent Alexander-Arnold territory." But we saw Salah lay it off for him. We saw a few short corner routines. We saw a free kick routine where the ball was passed out to the edge of the box where Thiago was stood, and Thiago sort of plays it back to Robertson, I think. I thought Thiago may have had a shot in that situation, but didn't have enough time to get the ball out of his feet with the Chelsea defender rushing up at him. We saw Thiago have a shot late on in the second half, which goes a bit wide, but his shooting range isn't that bad, I'll tell you. Doesn't score, all too many goals throughout a season, but he does have a good shot on him when he does get presented with the opportunity. Trent had an effort from outside the box late on as well, not really troubling the keeper. But I was just making sure I've covered all my points here. And I think we have. So thank you for joining me on the post-match discussion, I guess, of Liverpool against Chelsea. We'll be doing one after every Liverpool game. I'll try and sort of get an instant match reaction out just after all the games. But then again, watching games in Sydney, most of the games are at very odd times. You're looking at like 1 a.m, 2 a.m, that sort of time. So it's hard to get a post-match reaction like just right after the match, mostly because the people in my house are sleeping as well at that time, so I don't really want to disturb them either. But I'll always be doing like a sort of recap of the match and an in-depth analysis like today. Leave your thoughts and comments below. Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. Thanks for tuning in on LFC Down Under, where we'll be giving you sort of the Australian Liverpool supporter perspective on things. And I hope you enjoyed today. Please share the video around with your friends, share the channels, share my channel around with your friends. The video is also going up in podcast form on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so please subscribe on those platforms as well, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Up the Reds.